3 words. That's all it took to bring an $80 billion giant to its knees. A company that once ruled pockets, boardrooms, and entire governments, suddenly found itself fighting for breath. This wasn't a slow decline. It was a collapse no one saw coming. Not the investors. Not the executives. Not the millions of loyal users who believed this brand could never fall. Inside the company, warnings were rising like smoke. Outside, the world was shifting faster than they could react. And at the center of it all, 3 words that sealed their fate. BlackBerry wasn't just a phone company. It was a fortress. A symbol of power. A lifeline for anyone who mattered. CEOs, politicians, business leaders, they all relied on it. It wasn't just about messaging. It was about trust. Security. Control. And for years, that trust was justified. BlackBerry dominated the market. It set trends, dictated standards, and seemed untouchable. Every new device release was a global event. Every innovation celebrated. But success can be dangerous. Because when you dominate for long enough, you begin to believe it's permanent. Inside the headquarters, warning signs flickered. Engineers presented new ideas, prototypes, and data. They saw the world moving toward touchscreens, intuitive interfaces, and faster, sleeker devices. They warned leadership. They begged the company to act. But executives waved them off. Our keyboards are stronger. Our security is unmatched. Customers will never abandon what works. While the world sprinted ahead, BlackBerry paused. They polished what existed instead of creating what was coming. Innovation slowed. Competitors surged. And in that hesitation, the first cracks in the empire began to form, cracks that would soon become chasms. The warning signs were everywhere. They weren't whispers. They weren't subtle. They were flashing red lights, in surveys, in sales reports, in every conversation about the future of smartphones. Inside BlackBerry, the engineers saw it first. They tested, prototyped, calculated. They built devices that could compete with the touchscreen revolution. They created charts, models, and forecasts showing the market was moving in one clear direction. They walked into boardrooms expecting action, expecting vision, expecting leaders to see what was coming. Instead, they were met with disbelief. With crossed arms. With heads shaking. With the quiet arrogance of a company that had dominated for too long. And then came the meeting that would define BlackBerry's fate. The engineers presented everything, the future, the proof, the lifeline. They showed prototypes, data, trends, and predictions. They argued, explained, demonstrated, pouring years of insight into the room. And the response came. Slow. Measured. Fatal. He leaned back in his chair, smiled faintly, and delivered the sentence that would echo through the company for decades. Touchscreens won't last. 3 words. 3 words that stopped innovation in its tracks. 3 words that instantly froze the room. The air felt heavier. Murmurs died. Eyes widened. Hope, once alive in the engineers' hearts, began to drain. Outside, the world was sprinting forward. Apple unveiled new devices. Samsung introduced intuitive, touch-driven phones. Consumers were swiping, scrolling, exploring, embracing a future BlackBerry had refused to see. Inside, time seemed to stand still. Engineers stared at the screens of their prototypes as if pleading for the words to be undone. Junior staff looked at the board members with disbelief. Some muttered under their breath. Others simply sat frozen, knowing their work had just been invalidated by arrogance. And yet, the executive didn't see hesitation. He saw confidence. Certainty. Blind faith in a past that was already slipping away. BlackBerry polished keyboards while the world touched, scrolled, and swiped. They refined what was familiar while innovation sprinted past. Every warning ignored, every hesitation rationalized, every prototype dismissed became part of the momentum that would fracture the empire. The company that once defined the smartphone market was trapped. Reacting instead of leading. Frozen instead of evolving. And the 3 words, simple, arrogant, final, were at the heart of it. They weren't just wrong. They were fatal. And the consequences would ripple outward, reshaping the tech world and leaving BlackBerry scrambling for survival. The world didn't wait for BlackBerry to catch up. It never does. Apple, Samsung, and Android devices stormed the market, each release faster, sleeker, smarter. Touchscreens became the standard. Apps, fluid interfaces, intuitive gestures, things BlackBerry had dismissed, delayed, or ignored. Investors noticed first. Stock prices wavered, then dropped, then plummeted. Analysts raised alarms. Headlines shifted from praise to skepticism. Questions turned to criticisms. Confidence that had once seemed unshakable was crumbling. Inside BlackBerry, panic spread quietly at first. Emails went unanswered. Meetings ran late into the night. Executives shouted, debated, and tried to spin delays into strategy. Engineers worked around the clock, racing against a clock they could never beat. Projects were rushed. Features cut. Prototypes compromised. Everything felt like it was already too late. Stores reported falling sales. Customers drifted toward competitors who had embraced the future. Social media buzz turned against them, turning admiration into mockery. The empire that had once dictated the rules of the smartphone world now seemed trapped, reacting instead of leading. And still, those three words haunted the halls. Touchscreens won't last. A statement that had seemed so confident, so right, had become a symbol of denial. Time was no longer an ally. It had become a predator. Minute by minute, relevance slipped away. Investor trust evaporated. Employee morale collapsed. And the once unshakable giant began to fracture, quietly, then violently, before a watching world that no longer waited for anyone. The empire that had once ruled the smartphone world was gone. Offices that had thrummed with energy fell silent. Hallways emptied. Boardrooms echoed with the absence of authority. Thousands of employees faced layoffs. Careers built on loyalty, innovation, and pride were suddenly uncertain. Investors who had once celebrated every milestone now counted losses in billions. BlackBerry survived, but only as a shadow of its former self. The company pivoted toward software and security, leaving behind the devices that had made it legendary. Fragments of its legacy remained, a name, a story, a hint of past dominance, but the empire itself had vanished. And at the heart of it all were those three words. Touchscreens won't last. A phrase that had seemed confident and rational at the time became the emblem of failure. It wasn't a product failure. It wasn't a scandal. It was inertia. Arrogance. Blind refusal to adapt. BlackBerry's story is a warning. Even giants can fall. Even leaders can misjudge. A company can dominate for decades, only to see relevance slip away in a few years. Every decision matters. Every hesitation costs. And sometimes, three words, simple, confident, arrogant, are all it takes to turn certainty into collapse. For the world, it was a cautionary tale. For those inside, it was a lesson learned too late. And for anyone watching today, the story is clear. Innovation waits for no one, and the cost of inaction can be measured not in months, not in years, but in millions per minute. BlackBerry's fall wasn't caused by a scandal or a single product failure. It was caused by hesitation, denial, and refusal to adapt. For businesses today, the lesson is simple but brutal: innovation waits for no one. Markets change in seconds. Competitors move faster. Consumer expectations evolve relentlessly. Confidence without action is dangerous. Dominance without foresight is fragile. Small decisions, even a single dismissive phrase, can cascade into catastrophic consequences. Companies must listen, adapt, and embrace change before the world forces them to. Test new ideas. Take risks. Question assumptions. Move faster than comfort allows. BlackBerry's story is a warning and a guide. It shows that even the mightiest can fall, not because they were incompetent, but because they refused to see what was coming. For leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators, the clock is always ticking. Act decisively. Stay curious. And never underestimate the cost of inaction. If this breakdown opened your eyes, don't stop here. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who still thinks giants never fall. On this channel, we don't just watch history, we decode it, one empire at a time. Stay sharp. Stay curious. And I'll see you in the next one.